In the shadows of betrayal, love often finds itself shattered, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak and fury. When I stumbled upon the shocking truth of my wife's affair, my world turned upside down. Confronted with the stark reality of her infidelity, I grappled with feelings of rage and despair. But instead of succumbing to sorrow, I devised a plan for revenge that would forever alter the dynamics of our relationship. This is a tale of unexpected twists, deep emotions, and the lengths one will go to reclaim their dignity in the face of betrayal. Join me as I navigate the treacherous waters of love, loyalty, and the quest for justice in a heart-wrenching narrative that uncovers the raw truths behind trust and retribution. As I stepped outside, leash in hand, ready to take my dog for a much-needed walk and a refreshing run, I couldn't help but notice the hustle and bustle of my neighbors starting their cars and heading off to work. A deep sigh escaped my lips as the reality of my situation hit me. Without a workplace to rush to anymore, I was left adrift following the bankruptcy of my business. The crushing weight of debt loomed over me, and once again, I faced another day at home, trying to breathe life back into my once thriving venture that had met nothing but setbacks. The world outside continued to spin, but I felt like a mere spectator in a life that had moved on without me. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, I saw my neighbor James making his way over from his impeccably maintained driveway. James was the proud owner of a successful car import business and always had an array of luxury vehicles parked outside his home. Today was no different. A sleek sports car glinted in the morning sun as he approached with his characteristic confidence and a grin that seemed almost too bright. "Good morning," he greeted me cheerfully, his enthusiasm palpable. I managed a forced smile in return, though I couldn't help but feel a pang of annoyance at his upbeat demeanor. I remarked on how it seemed like another day of relaxation for him, but his response stung. He simply chuckled and mentioned his plans to import cars before strolling away, leaving me to wrestle with my feelings of inadequacy. I reminded myself not to let his thoughtless remarks get to me. After all, some people simply thrived on gloating. Home had once been my sanctuary, a place of warmth and solace. But now, it felt more like a stormy sea, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of the invisible rift that had formed between my wife, Nicole, and me. Nicole, who had once been my partner in every sense of the word, had grown distant and cold since the onset of my financial troubles. Gone were the days when she would call me eagerly to come home for a romantic dinner or cuddle up for a movie night. Our conversations had shifted from affectionate exchanges to mere logistical discussions, and our home, once filled with laughter and love, now served as a constant reminder of what we had lost. Desperate to reconnect, I tried to bring up fond memories of our past, reminiscing about the time when she used to check on me throughout the day. But Nicole's curt responses indicated that she was overwhelmed with work and uninterested in my attempts to bridge the growing divide between us. One evening, mustering all my courage, I approached her with a heartfelt desire to rekindle our relationship. I spoke of our first anniversary, recalling the candlelit dinner on the terrace and our dance beneath the stars. Her reaction was disheartening. She looked up from her laptop, her expression unreadable, and asked why I was bringing this up now. "I miss us," I confessed, my voice trembling slightly. "I miss how things used to be." But Nicole merely sighed and returned to her work, stating she didn't have time for reminiscing. The sharpness in her tone cut through me like a knife, leaving me feeling rejected and disheartened. I wanted to express my longing for the closeness we once shared, but her hardened gaze reminded me of the insurmountable distance that now separated us. "Whenever you're ready," I replied quietly, walking away, the heavy silence of our home echoing my despair. Yet, as I walked my dog through the park, a flicker of optimism ignited within me. Despite the failure of my business, I began to see it as just another obstacle in the grand scheme of life. "It's just another challenge," I whispered to my dog, patting his head. "I can and will rise again." When I returned home, I found Nicole at the dressing table, gracefully applying lipstick and makeup. Her reflection caught my eye, stirring memories of the early days of our love. I approached her, offering a gentle compliment about her beauty. To my dismay, she didn't even look up, continuing her routine as if I were invisible. A moment later, she gazed at her reflection and smiled, declaring to herself how beautiful she was. Determined to bridge the gap between us, I casually inquired about her work schedule for the evening. She paused, eyeing me curiously before replying, "Around 7, I think." I couldn't help but wink and ask, "Why?" With a sense of hope, I planned a surprise dinner, complete with her favorite wine, a small gesture, but perhaps it could spark a healing moment for our bond. As I refreshed our home with upbeat music playing in the background, I aimed to create an atmosphere radiating warmth and welcome for Nicole's return. Each washed dish and emptied trash brought me a small sense of accomplishment. After making our home shine, I headed to the grocery store to gather the ingredients for dinner. On a whim, I decided to stop by the wine store to pick up Nicole's favorite rosé. Upon entering, the familiar chime of the doorbell greeted me, and Pam, the saleswoman, recognized me with excitement. "It's been a while. How have you been?" she asked, her enthusiasm infectious. I mustered a half-smile, replying, "I've had better days, but I'm getting by." When I inquired about the rosé, Pam playfully raised her eyebrows, teasing, "Planning a romantic evening at home?" Little did she know, I was desperately hoping for a spark to reignite the love that once flourished between Nicole and me. This evening held the potential to be a turning point, a chance for us to reconnect, heal, and find our way back to each other amid the chaos. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would serve as the catalyst I needed to rebuild not only our relationship but my life as well. I couldn't help but chuckle, trying to mask the unease creeping in as I confirmed to Pam that it was indeed something like that. I casually mentioned that Nicole had just stopped by about an hour ago, picking up a bottle of the same wine I had chosen for our dinner. Pam seemed to realize she might have overshared, her face flushing slightly as she stammered that perhaps Nicole was planning a surprise of her own. Clearing her throat, she efficiently wrapped the bottle, hoping to redirect the conversation. As I drove home, a hopeful mood quickly shifted to a whirlwind of thoughts. Could it be true? Was Nicole planning something special for me? But why would she buy the wine earlier in the day? I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety swirling within me. I reminded myself not to jump to conclusions, after all, I would find out soon enough. Upon pulling into my driveway, I took a deep breath, attempting to calm the racing thoughts in my mind. The rich aroma of the dinner I had prepared filled the house, providing a temporary distraction from my swirling emotions. I glanced at the clock, 7:45 p.m. Nicole was usually punctual, but maybe work had held her up. I tried to reassure myself, yet a nagging feeling of unease lingered. Sitting at our dimly lit dining room table, set for two, I found myself checking my phone occasionally, hoping for a call or a message from Nicole. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, each passing moment intensifying the mystery surrounding Nicole's plans. Finally, around 8:30 p.m., my phone rang. Recognizing Nicole's ringtone, I answered quickly. "Hey," I greeted, trying to mask the concern creeping into my voice. "Robert, I'm so sorry," Nicole replied, her voice rushed and slightly breathless. "An unexpected business trip came up, and I couldn't turn it down. My boss insisted." I took a moment to process the news. "Oh, okay, but can't you leave in the morning or something?" "I'm actually already on my way there," she sighed. "It's a significant opportunity, it could open some doors for me." I inhaled deeply, wanting to be understanding, especially given my recent setbacks. "I understand. I just wish you had told me sooner." I know, she replied, her tone reflecting the urgency of the situation. "Everything happened so fast. I really have to go, Robert." I looked at the beautifully set table and the dinner I had prepared, feeling a pang of disappointment. "All right, take care. Call me when you can." Her voice softened. "Okay, I will. I'll be back soon. Bye. And by the way, I don't know how long it's going to last, maybe like 2 weeks or so. As the call ended, I sank into a chair, my shoulders slumping under the weight of the evening's unexpected turn of events. I struggled to piece together my thoughts. The unexpected trip felt plausible, yet the earlier wine purchase gnawed at me. Maybe she just wanted to unwind during her trip. I attempted to rationalize, pushing aside the cloud of doubt forming in my mind. Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself to focus on the present. Right in front of me was a delicious meal, and I was reluctant to let it go to waste. With renewed determination, I served myself some food and moved to the living room. The soft glow of the TV welcomed me as I switched it on, the familiar sounds of a game in progress offering a temporary escape from my worries. I settled onto the couch, allowing myself to get lost in the excitement of the game, the occasional chuckle escaping my lips as amusement began to wash over me. When my glass ran dry, I stood to refill it, feeling the evening's anxieties begin to fade, replaced by a lighter, warmer feeling. As I passed the study, an unexpected light caught my eye. The computer screen was illuminated. Curiosity piqued, I stepped inside the study and flipped on the overhead light. Maybe someone had left the computer on after having one too many drinks. Just as I was about to leave, another sound from the computer halted me in my tracks. A small pop-up appeared in the lower corner of the screen, photos successfully synced. My eyebrows shot up in surprise, and I approached the computer, clicking on the notification. The screen displayed a loading icon for a moment before revealing a list of files, all timestamped from just hours ago. Tentatively, I opened one of the files, and as the image began to load from top to bottom, a familiar face gradually came into view. Nicole's radiant smile appeared on the screen, her surroundings becoming clearer. By the time the image fully rendered, my heart sank. There she was, my wife, playfully taking a selfie while sitting on her boss's lap. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I slumped into a nearby chair, holding my head in my hands. All the doubts and suspicions I had pushed aside rushed back, now confirmed by the undeniable truth staring back at me. The room felt as if it were closing in on me as I stared at the screen, the playful glint in Nicole's eyes and the familiarity with which she leaned into her boss painting a story I desperately didn't want to believe. The wine I had consumed began to churn uneasily in my stomach. I clicked on another file, and a sequence of photos revealed Nicole and her boss at a fancy bar. In some pictures, they were laughing and toasting with their glasses, while in others, they were engaged in deep conversation, their faces disturbingly close. With each image, the harsh reality became clearer. The evening's attempts to rekindle our relationship, the dinner I had prepared with such hope, it all felt like a cruel joke. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the love I had for her with the betrayal I now faced. How had we ended up here? And what did it mean for us moving forward? As I walked, each step seemed to echo the ache in my heart, which felt like it was fracturing into countless pieces. Memories of the joyful moments I had shared with Nicole flooded my mind, but now they were painted with a hue of sadness. I couldn't help but replay the nagging question over and over: why? Why had Nicole grown distant? Had I failed her as a provider? I remembered the days when my business was thriving, when we both dreamed big dreams together. I had once promised her a luxurious Mercedes, a token of our success, but that promise remained unfulfilled. Could that unkept vow have contributed to her distancing herself, or was it something deeper? It was impossible to pinpoint a single reason. Perhaps it was a combination of overlooked moments, unspoken emotions, and accumulated resentment. All I knew for certain was that our relationship had shifted, leaving me enveloped in a profound sense of confusion and heartache. Entering the store, rainwater dripped from my face, soaking my coat. Pam, the cashier, recognized me and paused as she noticed the fading smile on my face. "Hey, Robert," she began gently, "having a tough day?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Whiskey, please." Pam, always perceptive, sensed something was amiss. "Are you sure about that? You know, if you need someone to talk to." I shook my head, interrupting her. "Just the whiskey, thanks." I took the bottle she handed me, offered a fleeting, wary smile, and left the store. I didn't wait until I got home to crack open the whiskey. After a few swallows, the world began to spin, and the drink stripped away my usual defenses. As I stumbled down the sidewalk, I started speaking louder to the strangers passing by. "Hey there," I slurred, pointing at no one in particular. "Do you know my wife? She's off somewhere having the time of her life with her boss while I'm here, throwing a one-man party." My laughter was bitter, dripping with sarcasm. As the minutes dragged on, my speech became increasingly incoherent. I found myself singing fragments of a song that had earlier accompanied a romantic dinner for two. My voice wavered, sometimes hitting the right notes, other times completely off-key. The sadness of my rendition hung in the air like a heavy cloud, the melody echoing the fractures in my heart. Suddenly realizing I had lost my whiskey bottle, I decided to head back to the store for another. As I swayed and muttered to myself, I reached into my pocket for cash, only to discover it was nowhere to be found. That's when I noticed an older man nearby, observing me with a mix of concern and curiosity. I raised my voice, slurring my words together as I confronted him. "What do you want, old man?" The elderly gentleman, wearing glasses and carrying a worn-out backpack, appeared taken aback by my aggression. But as soon as I caught sight of his worried expression, my tone shifted from confrontational to desperate. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice breaking. "I really need a drink right now. Can you spare $20? The old man sighed and reached into his pockets, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills. "It's all I have," he said, extending the money toward me. Still swaying, I accepted the money and mumbled my thanks. I then suggested he join me for a drink, but he gently declined, expressing concern for my already intoxicated state. Just as I was about to respond defiantly, my stomach turned, and I vomited onto the pavement. The cold rain soaked everything around me, leaving me wet and disoriented. I leaned against a brick wall, eyes closed, trying to catch my breath. The old man observed me with a furrowed brow, worry etched across his face. "Do you live nearby?" He prodded gently. In my hazy state, I murmured something incoherent, longing for sleep. The nearly deserted street was dimly lit by a nearby lamppost, casting long shadows on the wet pavement. The old man expressed his concern that it wasn't a suitable place to sleep, especially given the weather. Mustering his strength, he helped me to my feet, taking most of my weight, and guided me toward a nearby bridge. Beneath the bridge, hidden from the rain and prying eyes, was a makeshift shelter that served as his temporary home. Constructed from discarded materials and tarps, it offered limited comfort but at least provided a dry and relatively warm refuge. I stirred awake to the soft chirping of morning birds filling my ears, but my surroundings seemed foreign. A murky haze blurred my vision, and a pounding in my skull reminded me of last night's excesses. Wincing, I tried to orient myself in the dim light, which revealed a simple wooden shelter. With a groan, I pushed back the curtain and stepped outside. Next to a gentle river, the elderly man sat calmly, casting his fishing line. Despite the evident marks of time on his skin, his posture remained relaxed, and his hands displayed remarkable steadiness. As I cautiously approached, he greeted me with a knowing smile and remarked, "Took you a while to wake up. We had a bit too much fun last night." Momentarily taken aback by his warmth, I stammered, expressing my lack of memory about how I ended up there. The man, introducing himself as Jim Hughes, chuckled softly. "You drank too much last night," he explained. "I couldn't leave you there, so I brought you here." Heat rushed to my cheeks as embarrassment washed over me. I thanked Jim, expressing hope that I hadn't caused any trouble. He leaned back, the sun reflecting off his aged eyes, and admitted that I had indeed been a bit loud, especially in my shouts about my wife. Feeling the weight of the previous night's events crash down upon me, I realized that this man had shown me kindness in my darkest hour. And perhaps, amidst the pain of betrayal and loss, I could find solace in the connections that still remained, even if they came from unexpected places. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I looked at Jim. "I'm really sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been going through a tough time lately." As my words hung in the air, I noticed his gaze soften, an understanding spark igniting in his eyes. Jim offered me comforting words, sharing a glimpse into his own past. "I've been there too," he said gently, his voice rich with empathy. "I know what it's like to feel lost and to grapple with grief." His insights resonated deeply with me, especially when he shared the wisdom he had gained over the years. Pain has its own way of healing. Time helps, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. In an effort to shift our conversation, Jim suggested we have breakfast together. Without missing a beat, I blurted out my craving for something to drink, my splitting headache demanding immediate attention. Jim chuckled, as if he had already predicted my needs. Soon enough, the delightful aroma of simmering fish soup wafted through the air, teasing my senses. I watched in admiration as Jim skillfully prepared the meal, each movement fluid and practiced. "That smells heavenly," I exclaimed, my mouth watering. Jim flashed me a wink, proud of his culinary prowess, and said, "It's an old family recipe, perfect for mornings like these." As we settled down to enjoy the warmth and flavor of the fish soup under the open sky, Jim took a moment to share some advice. I sighed, feeling the weight of my circumstances. "I understand the importance of not letting alcohol control your life," I admitted, my voice laced with regret. Jim looked at me thoughtfully, his gaze lingering for a moment. "Life is complex," he replied. "Sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go and move on, especially if someone has wronged you." I sensed a flicker of sadness in his eyes but chose not to press further into the subject. Instead, I thanked Jim for his kindness and mentioned my intention to head home. As I prepared to leave, something caught my eye: intricately carved wooden figures and objects outside the shack. "Did you make these?" I asked, genuinely impressed. Jim's eyes lit up, a spark of pride evident as he confirmed that he had crafted them himself. "These pieces represent a part of my past," he explained. "Woodworking brings me peace." "Your talent is amazing," I complimented, a smile spreading across my face. As I continued my journey home, I felt a renewed sense of hope and possibility blooming within me. Upon arriving home, I rushed to my computer, a determination ignited within me. I began reaching out to local furniture stores, pitching my ideas with enthusiasm, eager to share my vision with the world. A week later, filled with hope and resolve, I retraced my steps to Jim's riverside shack, expecting to find him there. However, only his backpack and jacket lay near the dwelling, suggesting he had just stepped away. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Where could Jim be? Perhaps he was out fishing or gathering wood, I wondered. I considered coming back the next day. As I turned to leave, a sharp stone found its way into my shoe, creating an uncomfortable itch with every step. Frustrated, I let out a sigh and found a flat spot to sit down, eager to remove the pesky intruder. However, as I lifted my shoe, my eyes drifted past it to a lone figure standing perilously close to the edge of the bridge in the distance. Panic gripped me. The scene looked all too familiar. Without a second thought, I quickly slipped my shoe back on, not even bothering to tie the laces. "Step back," I shouted, desperation lacing my voice as I saw the person too close to the edge of the bridge. I feared the worst, praying I could reach them in time, hoping they would hear me and return to safety. With my heart racing, I ran across the wooden planks of the bridge, each thud echoing my urgency. As I drew closer, Jim's figure became clearer. Initially relieved to see my friend, my heart sank as I noticed a coiled rope lying on the ground beside him, replacing my relief with gut-wrenching fear. Jim's eyes, filled with pain and unshed tears, met mine, conveying a despair that words couldn't express. Without hesitation, I approached him slowly, careful not to startle him. I reached out, placing an arm around his shoulders as we stood there together, two souls on that bridge, sharing a moment of raw vulnerability. I tightened my grip, feeling Jim tremble as his tears finally flowed. I pulled him into a tight embrace, the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. "It's okay," I murmured softly into his ear, my voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here. We'll face this together." Sitting side by side on the bridge, Jim slowly began to unravel his story, sharing the threads of his life with me step by step. He started by mentioning his service to the country and his job at a food processing plant. "It may not have been glamorous," he said, "but it was honest labor." His voice carried a weary tone as he recounted his journey, revealing how he had secured a small apartment and done everything he could to provide for his daughter, who meant the world to him. The weight of his memories hung heavy in the air as he rubbed his forehead, continuing to explain how he lost his job when the plant downsized, which led to missing a rent payment and his subsequent eviction just a week later. "I felt like I had nothing and no safety net," he confessed, pain etched in his eyes. With every word, Jim's story painted a picture of despair. He spoke of returning to his hometown with hopes of finding better luck, only to face difficulties due to his lack of a permanent address. Even job interviews ended in rejection because of his history of job loss. He looked down, fidgeting with his hands, conveying the anguish that lingered beneath the surface. "I was picked up for sleeping in places I shouldn't have been," Jim continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then I fell seriously ill." He shared how scarce assistance was and how he eventually found refuge in a friend's van, a temporary solution at best. Stumbling upon the shack by the bridge, he revealed how it had become his makeshift home. With a heavy sigh, he expressed the most painful part of his experience, knowing his daughter was out there, believing her father had abandoned her. The depth of his despondency hit me like a wave, and my heart ached for him. This elderly man, with his gentle demeanor and genuine smile, stirred a protective instinct within me. As we walked back to the shack together, I spoke with genuine warmth. "Life has thrown some hard punches your way, Jim," I said, "but you're not alone in this battle anymore." His eyes glistened with a mix of gratitude and astonishment, and my mind raced with possibilities. I had a vision, and Jim possessed the skills. Together, we could forge a new path ahead. I had a vision, a dream to start a small furniture business, and I couldn't think of a better partner than Jim. As I proposed the idea to him, I suggested we begin with crafting beautiful cradles. Jim's initial reaction was one of surprise. He hadn't expected such an offer. Yet, as I spoke, I could see a flicker of hope ignite in his eyes, a spark that had been absent for far too long. "Do you really trust me with this?" he asked hesitantly. I smiled, reassured him, and replied, "I wouldn't have suggested it if I didn't." Over the next 2 weeks, the sounds of sawing, hammering, and our shared laughter filled my garage. Each cradle we crafted became more than just a piece of furniture, it carried with it a story of hope and fresh beginnings. As we worked side by side, Jim transformed from a guest in my home into a cherished member of my family. We shared meals, exchanged stories, and explored dreams together, strengthening our bond with each passing day. Once our creations were ready, I loaded the beautifully crafted wooden cradles into my truck and set off to the local furniture stores. Their intricate designs and expert craftsmanship quickly caught the attention of store owners. When one of them inquired about the craftsman behind these masterpieces, I proudly shared Jim's story, emphasizing his remarkable talent. It didn't take long for our cradles to gain popularity. Customers were drawn to their uniqueness and the exceptional craftsmanship that set them apart from the rest. As word spread, we found ourselves inundated with orders from more and more stores, our small business thriving beyond our expectations. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with my wife Nicole's name flashing across the screen. A wave of anticipation washed over me, mingled with memories of our past conversations. However, our brief chat soon took an unexpected turn. Nicole mentioned a delay in her plans and a potential extended trip abroad. My curiosity piqued. I asked for more details, but there was a moment of silence. When she finally spoke, it was clear she hesitated, revealing her urgent need for a loan. "I'm sorry, Nicole," I said gently. I can't do that right now. Her irritation was palpable over the phone. Fine. Forget it, she snapped before abruptly ending the call. Despite the tension with Nicole, Jim and I were riding a wave of success. The demand for our finely crafted cradles was steadily increasing, and it became clear that our small workspace was becoming inadequate to accommodate our growing enterprise. I recalled a conversation with my friend Mark, who owned an old barn just outside of town. It was spacious and sturdy, and after being vacant for years, it was the perfect place for our operations. Transitioning to the barn was seamless. We hired a couple of eager local workers, enthusiastic to learn the craft and contribute to our burgeoning success. I found myself overseeing operations more frequently from my home office, balancing the demands of our business with my family life. One evening, after a particularly long day at the barn, Jim returned home to a delightful surprise. As he walked through the door, he found me bustling around in the kitchen, a sight that was rare for him. Typically, we would share a simple dinner with the crew back at the barn, but tonight was special. The table was elegantly set, and the delicious aroma of a home-cooked meal filled the air. "Please, take a seat, Jim," I said with a welcoming smile, motioning for him to join me. Though perplexed, Jim complied, observing my movements with curiosity. Finally, I joined him at the table, my apron off and a wide grin on my face. "I hope you won't be upset, Jim," I began, my eyes gleaming with excitement. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. I answered the door, and a young girl entered hesitantly, her wide eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. Following her was a woman, a sight that made Jim's expression shift dramatically from confusion to elation as he recognized his daughter, Mindy. He rose from his seat, stumbling slightly as he rushed toward her. They embraced tightly, their emotions filling the room with a warmth that needed no words. Behind them, I stood with the young girl, Kristen, smiling warmly at the heartwarming reunion. Mindy's voice quivered as she spoke through her tears, expressing emotions that transcended language. In that moment, I felt the essence of family and the beauty of new beginnings intertwine, creating a tapestry of love, trust, and hope that we would cherish forever. "I thought I'd never see you again, Dad," Jim managed to choke out, his voice quivering with emotion. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air as Mindy replied softly, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have reached out." "You should have, Dad," she said, her tone mingling frustration with compassion. "But it's okay now." As she gently stroked her father's hair, a sense of warmth filled the room. Jim nodded, gripping his daughter as if she were a lifeline, terrified that she might disappear if he loosened his hold. His gaze drifted between Mindy and the little girl at her side, confusion flickering across his face. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. With a light laugh, Mindy replied, "That's Kristen." Jim looked at his granddaughter, a precious child he had only seen as a tiny infant in photographs. His heart swelled with a mixture of joy and regret as he took in her bright eyes and curious smile. I clapped my hands gently to gather their attention. "Well, everyone, dinner is ready. Please come to the table." As we settled around the table, the atmosphere shifted from one of uncertainty to a burgeoning sense of togetherness. As the meal progressed, Mindy opened up about her tumultuous journey over the past month. "Finding my father consumed me," she confessed, her voice quivering slightly. "It strained my relationship with my husband and ultimately led to our separation." The weight of her struggles hung in the air, but in that moment, with her father beside her and new friends enveloping them in warmth, she felt a sense of peace and closure that had eluded her for so long. The energy in the room blossomed with laughter and heartfelt conversations, each moment weaving a fabric of healing that wrapped around us. Mindy and Kristen brought a delightful spirit into my home, their presence a soothing balm for my own wounds. Sensing their need to reconnect, I invited them to stay longer, knowing how vital it was for my friend to rebuild the bond she had lost. Later that evening, while I immersed myself in paperwork in my home office, the main door creaked open. It wasn't Jim or Mindy. I recognized their cheerful greetings, and a knot of apprehension formed in my stomach. When I glanced up, I saw Nicole enter. She looked exhausted, her shoulders slumped and dark circles shadowing her eyes. A heavy sigh escaped her lips as she dropped her bags, stretching her weary body. I watched her silently, my brow furrowing with concern. She moved past me and sank onto the living room sofa, her every gesture reflecting sheer fatigue. Taking a deep breath, I approached her, hesitating momentarily before sitting beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Nicole turned to look at me, her eyes searching for understanding. "Look, Robert, I know things have been complicated." I raised a hand to interrupt her, keeping my voice low and steady. "Did you have your phone sync turned off?" Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, her eyes widening as realization dawned on her. I swallowed hard, fighting to hold back the torrent of emotions that threatened to spill over. "I saw the pictures, Nicole. I didn't need to see more than a few to understand." "Robert, please listen," she implored, her desperation palpable. "It's not how it seems. We were just—" I stood abruptly, cutting her off. "I wish I hadn't seen those photos, Nicole. But now that I have, things can never be the same. I won't pretend everything's okay." Her voice trembled as she pleaded, "Just give me a chance to explain." I shook my head, firm in my resolve. "I think it's best if you leave." "Is this it?" Nicole's tone escalated, frustration creeping in. "You won't even hear me out? Fine. But just remember, no one will ever stand by you the way I did. No one will love you like I did." Just then, the creaking of the front door interrupted our heated exchange. Jim entered, freezing mid-step as he realized the gravity of the situation. Sensing the tension, he opted to retreat quietly, gently closing the door behind him. As Nicole's bravado crumbled, a genuine remorse washed over her. "Robert, I'm truly sorry," she whispered, her voice laced with regret. Though I acknowledged her apology, I remained resolute in my request for her to leave. As Nicole exited, I turned to see Kristen playing cheerfully on the lawn outside. She spotted me and rushed over, throwing her tiny arms around my legs. The innocence of her embrace highlighted the stark contrast between the turmoil of the past and the promise of a brighter future. Nicole lingered at the door, taking in the scene, and a pang of realization struck her. Perhaps someone else would indeed offer me the love and respect I deserved, something she had been unable to provide. As I knelt to embrace Kristen, I felt a surge of hope for what lay ahead, free from the shadows of my past.